Well, hello everybody and welcome to the new season of the European Urology Podcast. My name is Declan Murphy, urologist here in Melbourne, Australia, and I'm speaking to you from the GUcast studios where we pump out all our episodes of GUcast. 5 years we've been running with GUcast now, and we're delighted to support another season of the European Urology Podcast. I'd like to thank my co-host from the previous season, Dr. Joyce Bard, who did a great job running this podcast, but she's got other commitments, so won't be joining us this season. But I'm very, very pleased to be welcoming Dr. Nikita Bhatt, who is actually well known, I'm sure, to many of you who were listeners or viewers on the first season of the European Urology Podcast. Nikita joined us for a segment most months where she talked about other highlights in the journal, but she's now agreed to join me as co-host. And let's go to Newcastle in the UK and say hello to Nikita. Nikita, hello and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Declan. Thanks so much for having me. It's been really great doing these with you last year. And I'm back after a brief stint of having twins. So that's been good. And now I'm a fellow in robotic and reconstructive urology in Newcastle, the Freeman. And it's going really well. And I'm really excited to do this new season with you.
Yeah, I do remember on the first season, your pregnancy with these beautiful twins was part of the narrative. And we were delighted to hear that these babies arrived very well. I hope they're behaving themselves very well, but it's great to see you back in action. And we saw you at the EAU meeting recently. It's like you didn't miss a beat. I saw you were involved in all the usual panels. You're on the guidelines panel and the dissemination panel and multiple other roles within the EAU. So great to see you back in full action, Nikita.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it's been great coming back and meeting everyone at EAU, and really excited for this podcast today as well.
Yeah, great. Look, so thanks very much for joining us. We've got a cracking episode coming up as ever. We do a monthly podcast for European Urology kicking off with this season. This is April 2025. So what we're going to do is highlight two papers we've published in the journal this month, and we're going to chat to two of the authors. So coming up, first of all, we're going to Barcelona to speak to Dr. Alberto Briganti about his very nice paper about their 8-year multi-center experience of robotic renal transplantation. Very fascinating. If you know nothing about this, we have a great chance to have a quick chat with Alberto about this, and please of course go and read the paper. The links are in the notes for that. Then we're off to Florida to chat to Phil Spiess, whose group have put together a very nice overview of the epidemiology of testicular cancer. So this is a kind of a one-stop shop for any of you who need to update yourselves on the background to testicular cancer. It'll be a very popular, highly cited systematic review. And then finally, we have a quick segment from the EAU meeting in Madrid just a few weeks ago where myself and Alberto Briganti, our editor-in-chief, caught up with one of our award winners. So Nikita, how does that sound? Is that a good sounding April 2025 episode of the European Urology Podcast?
It's very exciting. It's full on, just like most of us would like to see. I'm especially excited about the fact that it's non-cancer based, not particularly anything against cancer. I do cancer as well, but it's good to see benign urology being highlighted. So I'm delighted.
Well, that's partly your doing. Yeah. So it's unfortunately, it's an all too common criticism in some of the biggest impact journals in the world, not just European Urology, is that, it's all oncology. And look, that's unfortunately because a lot of the best research, the highest cited research, are these randomized trials. But of course, our audience are urologists, and there's a lot more to urology than oncology, of course. So there's nothing we like more than highlighting non-oncology topics in the journal. And it's kind of amazing on the podcast this month to have avoided talking about oncology. If you want GU oncology, that's what GUcast is for. And of course, inevitably, we'll be back in business doing oncology papers in the coming months. But that's partly your influence. I knew you were pressuring us to make sure we weren't just talking about prostate cancer again, Nikita.
Thank you.
Oh, great. And of course, as ever, please do get in touch if you'd like us to introduce a new segment. We do sometimes like to talk with our editors or other contributors to the journal. We love talking to trainees, and we will be bringing back our segment next month where one of our trainees from around the world is going to have a quick overview of what else is happening in the journal, what Nikita used to do last year. But I think with all that, let's get going and go to Barcelona and chat to Alberto Briganti. Great. So it's a real pleasure to welcome a friend of the European Urology Podcast and friend of GUcast as well, my mate, Dr. Alberto Briganti from Barcelona. Alberto, thank you very much for joining us on the European Urology Podcast.
Very good to be with you guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, he's a busy guy, Nikita. It's great to chat down Alberto Briganti for a chat on this podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Total legend.
Total legend. Okay, well, look, congratulations on this really nice paper that you've got in this month's edition of European Urology. It's an extraordinary, really, 8-year experience of more than 600 robotic renal transplantations from 10 centres. And huge congratulations for this immense surgical experience and for all the work you and your team have done in developing this procedure over the past 8 or 10 years or so. So we wanted to not go through the whole paper in great detail. You know, that we've got the links in the show notes for people to do that, but just to briefly summarize what you're reporting in this big paper.
Well, sure, Declan. This is actually, I'm very proud of this paper because this is coming, as you said, is going back to 2015. In fact, this year in July it will be 10 years from the first reported robotic kidney transplantation in Europe, which were performed by us in Fundacio Puigvert and Nicolas Dumerc in Toulouse University. That was done at the same time, in the same day, on the 9th of July of 2015. And since then, I think I had this idea of putting together a prospective database, unifying the experience of initially 4 centers, but then 6 more added up to the database. So now we have truly 10 centers with an experience of over 8 years in robotic kidney transplantation. And the beautiful thing is that all these centers have been trained by the same proctors. Therefore, the technique we're using is standardized. And therefore, I think that the results are really honest in analyzing what it is nowadays, the experience over 8 years, as you said, of robotic kidney transplantation. And since the first one that we have performed, we immediately understood that this was the way for us to invest our research in performing a minimally invasive approach to the kidney transplant population, which by definition are very fragile people, very fragile patients. And so with this paper, we are now able to show that not only the results of kidney transplantation from the living donor population performed robotically is safe, but also that the results are quite comparable to the open approach in terms of functional results, with better outcomes in terms of complication rate, which is definitely smaller than in the open reports from the literature, which is in a way what we wanted to demonstrate from the very beginning. As you well know, the functional data, the functional results cannot be better than open when we're talking about kidney transplantation. There's no way we can be better than open. At least we should demonstrate that it is identical to open. But what we're expecting that by being minimally invasive, we would have diminish the complication rate, which is in fact what it has been proven, particularly the stricture rate, urethral stricture rate, wound complications, abdominal hernia, and arterial stenosis, which are among the most important complications in kidney transplantation.
Brilliant. I might ask a follow-up question to what you've just said there. What do you see is now sort of this deciding factor between robotic versus open approach in your center for kidney transplantation, considering your outcomes are so good with robotic kidney transplantation?
Yeah, so the transition to disease, I'm sorry, I might have missed your voice for a second. So you mean from the living donor to the diseased donor population?
No, sorry, I meant how do you select someone for a robotic approach versus
I'm sorry,
a standard?
I didn't get that. I didn't get your voice for a second. So yeah, so the selection right now is done basically. All the kidney transplantations are performed from living donor. So if you have a living donor, then you're immediately a candidate for robotic kidney transplantation. The selection is done this way because when you're doing a transplantation from a living donor, it's an elective surgery. And because the robotic approach has to be performed by the same team at a certain time of the day, it would be very complex to have a transplantation from a deceased donor, which normally are performed at night shifts with, very little possibility to have your own team. So other than that, it's also a selection based on a CT scan that you perform to your patients. So you certainly don't want to perform a robotic approach in a severely atherosclerotic iliac artery, because there are issues with the clamping, given the fact that of course you don't have the tactile feedback, and therefore you need to clamp in a very particular way when there are plaques. And also the arteriotomy. So basically, it's truly a contraindication of robotic kidney transplantation, in my opinion, when there are when there's severe atheromatosis. Other than that, robotics are, in my opinion, robotic transplants are, in my opinion, the way to go for living donors. And in fact, we are performing more and more robotic kidney transplantation in very complex cases where really the robot approach helps you out very much.
That's what I was going to ask you about, Alberto. These patients, the recipients are not always in superb health. Often they have comorbidities because of the nature of their underlying disease. Sometimes they're quite overweight, or sometimes the graft itself can be complex with multiple renal arteries and so on. So how do you feel the robotic approach helps you or otherwise with these patients who maybe have comorbidities or the graft itself is a little bit complicated?
Well, comorbidities, particularly the obese population, and thanks for asking this because we published this already in our previous publications. This is, in fact, probably and possibly the best indication for the robotic approach when you have an obese patient, an obese recipient. And for obese, I mean with a BMI over 30, but certainly over 35. You have to understand that almost 40% of the centers in the world would exclude from kidney transplantation patients with a BMI over 35. And that's because, of course, not only because there might be a contraindication, a functional contraindication to the kidney transplant, but also because this population is at high risk of complications, and therefore they are excluding them. But now with the robotic approach, it has been shown how, in fact, in this population, it's actually very, very useful to have a robotic approach because not only you reduce the complications, but it renders the surgery much and much easier. As far as the multiple arteries or multiple veins, as I told you before, it's just a matter of learning curve. Right now, I don't care if there are 2, 3, or 4 arteries or 2 or 3 veins. Um, in fact, we do the bench surgery on the table as the skin is out, and then it depends if there are 2 arteries. Usually we like to put it in a pair of pants, so then we use a single anastomosis. We can do lateral terminal or terminal lateral anastomosis with 2 or 3 arteries, and if you want to do it separate anastomosis robotically, we have done that. So 2 or 3 separate anastomosis is absolutely good. And as I told you before, the more you do, the more you want to do. Just to give you an example, we try to perform a prospective randomized trial with comparing open to robotic. And the funny thing is that all the centers that now are doing robotic surgery, they were not fine to propose to their patients to be randomized to open because they don't want to go back to open.
Deary me,
Wow.
it's always the challenge, Nikita, randomized trials in surgery. And when you lose the equipoise because either the patients or the clinicians themselves say, look, I don't feel comfortable with the randomization, it's a challenge. And I think we might have to accept that we won't have a randomized trial in this particular setting.
Correct.
Yeah. So and Nikita, you're obviously very interested in training. You're just finishing your own training in the UK. I think you wanted to quiz Alberto in this. Is this the sort of operation that will be on routine training programs, or it's not straightforward, Nikita, is it?
No, and there's a lot of debate about this in the UK, and certainly my center isn't doing this robotically just yet. So, how would you propose to set up training programs so outside Europe? And I appreciate this is a multi-center trial within Europe. What about the UK or the US or Australia? How would you train us?
Well, right now, within the ERUS, I'm the president of the ERUS section of robotic surgery of the European Association of Urology since 2001. We have started to perform courses in at the Orsi Center in Ast, and these courses are courses on robotic kidney transplantation, where the attendees, they come for 3 days. The first day they basically test themselves with the skill that they have in robotic surgery in a dry model. We have a dry model for anastomosis, so they try to do it, and once they are ready, then on day 2 they do the kidney transplant on an animal model, and then on day 3 they assist 1 or 2 live cases, either from the Aalst University, the Ghent University, or from my center in Fundacio Puigvert. And the beauty of these courses is that they've been elected the most successful courses at the Orsi Center. We do approximately 7 to 8 a year. The beauty, as I said, it was that not only the attendees, they can come to our to the Orsi and do the course, but then if they want to start their program on robotic kidney transplantation, we provide the proctoring to their center. So for the first 3 cases, we join them and we help them start in the program. And this is a very important follow-up, because when I started, I was alone. I trained in India with Rajesh Alawat, which I always mention because he was my mentor and the father of the robotic kidney transplantation, together with Manny Menon. So for me, those 2 guys are the most important guys for my career, and I will never be thankful enough to them. But I had to start alone when I came back home. Now, with these courses, not only you can come, but as I said, we come to your center, when we proctor you, we help you start in the robotic approach. And then once you started, then you can join us in the database, so you learn by doing. So in my opinion, this is something that nowadays it should be done this way. There are courses not only at the Orsi Center, but also in other centers, training centers throughout the world. And yeah, I think this is the easiest ways to start.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
And we will put some links into Orsi and ERUS, of course. You have the main ERUS meeting coming up in September, Alberto, which is a huge highlight of the year for all of us. And we'll talk to you separately about that, actually, maybe to promote it. But ERUS, I think, is a great platform for dissemination of all sorts of robotic skills, and your partnership with Orsi, with the amazing facility they have in Belgium, is just awesome for this type of course, I think. Finally, this is all about Da Vinci surgery, this current experience of more than 600 cases, but I know you personally have now experience using some of the next generation of robots coming outside Da Vinci. So what are your thoughts on robotic renal transplantation on some of the newer platforms?
Well, I think inevitably it will come. More and more robotic platforms will be acquired by many hospitals. So we will inevitably see robotic kidney transplantation from other platforms. I have to tell you that right now, the 2 platforms that I'm using are the Intuitive and the Medtronic. And Medtronic, they're still lacking instruments for the kidney transplant. We need very particular instruments, including the pot scissors, the black diamond graspers. So these are very specific needle drivers and very fine instruments, which we really need in order to perform the kidney transplantation. So I would say that right now, the only robot that it has been experienced, it has experienced on robotic kidney transplants is the Intuitive, but I'm sure that very soon we will have new robots, particularly the Chinese robots, so which have already the all armamentarium instrumentations. So yeah, it will come, no doubt.
Amazing. That's just fantastic, Alberto. Well, congratulations again to you and your collaborators for this really nice publication in this month's edition of European Urology Podcast. As I say, the links are in the notes. Please go and digest this. And if you're interested, just look up Orsi and Eros. We have the links in the show notes as well. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. And see you all at the Eros in London.
Declan, that was amazing. I really enjoyed that segment. I mean, Alberto Breda is brilliant, and the fact that he's chair of ERIS and the ERIS meeting is coming up. There's so much to learn in the field of robotics. It's constantly evolving, new applications, new robots coming in every day. So that really filled me with a lot of excitement and inspiration to learn and do more. So can't wait to go to ERIS this year.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. And, you know, even for me as a robot enthusiast for 20 plus years, when I saw these initial reports about robotic renal transplantation coming out years ago, I thought, oh, that's just going to be a little flash in the pan. You know, it's great that some very talented surgeons can do this safely. But to see this large multi-center experience, a really good group they've put together to look at their data. And as you say, especially the good training structure they've put in place for people who want to selectively bring this into their transplantation practice. It's awesome. So yeah, well done to Alberto and all his collaborators.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the fact that it's applicable to others makes it something that everybody can at least aspire to achieve. And it would be great to see this coming in other centers in the UK. And I know guys already doing this, so it would be great to see this elsewhere in the UK as well.
Great. Well, the links to the main paper, please go and look at the main paper, are in the show notes. But now let's move on to our second paper this month. We're going to Florida to chat to Dr. Phil Spiess about the epidemiology of testicular cancer. So it's a great privilege for me to welcome my old friend, Phil Spiess, Dr. Phil Spiess, very much specialized in GU oncology, a urologist at Moffit Cancer Center in Tampa, for our second paper on this month's edition of the European Urology Podcast. Phil, thanks so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, Declan. Thanks to you and the European Urology for highlighting our work.
Well, yeah. And look, first of all, congratulations on this very nice paper. We totally love this. We don't talk about testicular cancer enough. And I know that apart from specializing full-time in GU oncology, and I've known you for many years, you do have an interest in these rarer GU cancers. So before we kind of dive into something about the paper, I wanted to ask you about that. What led you to decide to do this systematic review on testicular cancer epidemiology and risk factors?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question because, you know, a lot of our trainees always ask us the same question is, you know, why do people get certain cancers? And when you start talking about rare cancers, particularly for testicular cancer, I know oftentimes what my trainees would typically say is, well, an undescended testicle. But we know much of what we know for many cancers, including for rare cancers, is much more, I would say, nuanced and much more refined today. Obviously, we have a lot of great research going on around the globe. So we really want to look and provide a real world, contemporary, really knowledge base related to what do we ultimately know related to the incidence, the prevalence, what's going on around the world related to the cases, the types of cases we're seeing, and also have a better understanding of what are really the risk factors that are really critically important for us to understand are really well evidenced to be causing or potentially associated with testicular cancer. And also try to understand why there are some differences in incidences, including some increases in incidences of this cancer in many parts of the world.
Yeah, look, it's great. And I think for that reason, this will be a go-to resource for urology trainees or any of us who are interested in testicular cancer. And great to see it in such a big journal like European Urology. Now, I know it's a big effort putting these together and especially trying to get it past peer review at the top journal. So tell us a bit about the collaborative team that put this together. I can see your first author, Valentina Tateo, is at San Raffaele in Milan, but you have a really diverse group of experts involved in this.
Yeah, so, you know, I think like much of what European urology does, I think they gave us a good framework to try to get a global, I would say, authorship of leaders and people who are dedicated to the treating of testicular cancer. And Valentina is a really exceptionally gifted, I would say, fellow at San Rafael, as we know, powerhouse institution globally for, I would say, the care of GU oncology. But Tatiana really has had a strong, I would say, level of focus on rare cancers. And she's committed to working on this review and really leading the efforts to really bring together all of the literature. And as you mentioned, we know the review articles today, particularly for high caliber journals like European Urology, is not just a matter of just gathering articles, but really critically assessing the literature related to what articles really are at the high benchmark related to the way the studies were conducted, the interpretation of studies, and also, most importantly, avoiding any biases related to the interpretation of how the study were conducted, and really giving you really real world but best level evidence to know what risk factors are really well validated to be of relevance.
All right, well, look, let's dive into it because, when I saw the title of this first, I went, well, come on, epidemiology of testicular cancer and risk factors. That hasn't changed in 40 years, surely. And there's probably a review article written 10 years ago that would be the same. But of course, I would be wrong about that. So tell us a bit overall then about this. Now, in this short segment on the European Urology Podcast, we don't dive into the whole detail. The link is in the show notes, and we really encourage people to go and download this and circulate it in your department. It's a great resource. But tell us a bit about your top-line findings for these risk factors in epidemiology.
Yeah, so I think something that was actually quite surprising to us, to be honest with you, when we started looking at the literature, is that the incidence of testicular cancer is increasing fairly dramatically, overall about 13%.
Yeah.
When you look at it in many parts of Europe and Western Europe, Northern Europe, and Eastern Europe particularly, we're seeing, increases anywhere from about 15 to up to 30% increases over the past 10 to 15 years. In America, we're also seeing some significant increases, particularly in certain races and ethnicity groups. Non-Hispanic whites typically have the highest incidence currently in the United States. We're actually seeing that much of the increases in incidences of testicular cancer actually that we're seeing in the United States particularly are in minority groups, something which is really important to highlight because oftentimes, as you know, is many of these groups are oftentimes have less access to care in many parts of the world. And it's an important educational component related to raising awareness, particularly for cancers such as this that are so curable and treatable.
Well, that's kind of an amazing headline already for anyone listening to this. If you only remember one thing this morning or this evening as you're out for your walk or your run or whatever you're up to, is that the incidence of testicular cancer has been increasing. Now, that was a surprise to me. And so that's a headline. There it is. So something is changing. And then within the paper, I love the way you've split the very complex analysis you've done into sort of three main areas. You look at geographic factors in incidence and risk factors, genetic factors, and then prenatal and perinatal things. So that's really done in great detail in the paper. But if you wanted to chat us through briefly those things, the geographic factors, genetic and prenatal, perinatal factors.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, geographically, we're seeing no question the higher incidence of testicular cancer in certain parts of the world, first and foremost, and including in Europe. We're actually also seeing some increases in Asia, actually. That was very surprising to us. And those are also things that are pretty consistent over the past 10 years. We're seeing as well that there's no question there is a familial component to testicular cancer, which we're appreciating. It doesn't represent a large overall subset of patients with testicular cancer, about 2%. But when you see the incidence and I would say the risk that having a first-degree relative has for developing testicular cancer, it's actually fairly high. It's up to 30%. So it is important to understand that much of that is associated to, as you mentioned, genetics, but likely some environmental related factors as well. So, I think that it's important to understand, I think we're starting to get an understanding related to the genetic associations and predispositions to getting testicular cancer. We know that certain genetic disorders, for a perfect example is cystic fibrosis. cystic fibrosis because of the associations with testicular abnormalities, particularly the patients who have that delta 508 mutation, which we all know, have a higher incidence of testicular cancer and also a probably more aggressive form of testicular cancer than most conventional subtypes. Also, patients who have some sort of testicular androgen insensitivity syndrome. Obviously, we know that can cause higher testosterone and male hormone production. And as an association with that, they do have a higher association of testicular cancer as well. Something we used to hear about is also Down syndrome, whether Down syndrome has an association with testicular cancer. Most of the literature on that is a little more controversial. There may be, but I would say the literature on that is not as clear-cut related to the association with testicular cancer itself. And so much of what we're learning also on testicular cancer also is because of our refinement related to a lot of the genomic testing that's going on right now. We realize that there is often single nuclear pleomorphisms or SNP abnormalities in patients with testicular cancer. If you look at specifically patients who have a mutation or SNP mutations or abnormalities, that represents about 40% of the genetic abnormalities that we find in testicular cancer. So no question, whole genome sequencing is helping us identify some of the mutations that are important in the development of testicular cancer. One, which is very frequently seen, is the CHEK2 mutation. CHEK2 mutation is probably the most frequently that we see in people with testicular cancer. And so I think we're getting there and understanding that there's probably much at play in most patients who get testicular cancer. Probably the most frequent factors, which again come into play, is probably early exposure to certain, I would say, toxins, either the prenatal or early natal, or also clearly genetic factors which predispose to developing testicular cancer. And as a whole, that represents a significant subset of patients who may have those risk factors other than the ones we conventionally associate with it, like, for example, when we'll talk about cryptorchidism, for example.
Just amazing. Can I ask you, just in your own practice then, do you routinely check testicular cancer tissue? Do you do somatic testing for molecular abnormalities like CHEK2 routinely in your practice, or is that something we should be doing?
It's a really good question. We haven't done it up until this point, to be very honest with you. It's probably something we should consider, particularly in parts of the world where we're seeing a higher incidence, to understand if these may be explaining some of why we're seeing these types of increased prevalences. I hear, and we actually saw in some of our data, some parts of South America as well. For example, in Chile, I was there last year, and they shared with me that in some subsets within Chile, the incidence of testicular cancer is 20 or 30 times higher in certain areas versus the rest of the country. And so there is definitely some environmental component, but probably genetic component associated with that as well.
And as ever, and I know you're passionate, as I said, about these rare GU cancers, there's just not enough work. There's not enough funding to be doing that sort of fundamental work to understand it a bit better. But this paper certainly goes a long way towards helping us understand this. And the final thing I want to talk to you about is about strategies or learnings we might have from this understanding about the increased incidence, but also the at-risk group. So do you think we can do better especially in areas or in risk groups that have higher risk, to sort of maybe not quite screen, but identify those patients and have ourselves and our patients be a bit better informed, so we pick up these conditions a bit earlier?
Yeah, no, I very much agree. I think we probably have to have a higher degree of I would say, information and awareness within our healthcare systems related to what these trends and incidences are. Perfect example, like as you mentioned, certain parts of Europe and countries where we're clearly seeing an incidence that's increasing by literally 20% over 10 years. And really start, understanding, particularly in patients who have risk factors, whether that be cryptorchidism, whether that be infertility is another one, particularly when it's associated with microlithiasis, or if there's a strong family history, if you have a first degree with testicular cancer, to understand how these patients should be screened. I think it's also important to sort of educate a lot of our primary care physicians related to this, related to talking to patients and counseling them about testicular self-examination, and particularly in patients who are at, when they're in that category at risk related to develop these cancers, mid puberty all the way to the age of 40 or 45 years old. And I think if we do that, I think it gives us opportunities to obviously make sure we're identifying these cancers when they're highly treatable, avoiding, potentially toxic treatments. As you know, for testicular cancer today, it's not so much about cure. We can cure, luckily, many of our patients, but the toxicity, when we start talking about potential several courses of chemotherapies and consolidate surgical resection, it really, escalates related to the long-term consequences they could have for patients.
Yeah, so the early pickup is always going to be important. Well, look, congratulations again, Phil, to you and your collaborators, Valentina and co, for putting this really nice review together. As I said, I think it's going to sit there as a really useful go-to landmark publication for better understanding the epidemiology and risk factors for testis cancer. The links are in the show notes, so please go check it out, download it for yourself, circulate it around your department, as I've already done today, and we look forward to learning more about this important and oft neglected area of GU oncology. So thanks very much to you, Phil.
Thanks so much, Declan.
What a brilliant conversation there, Declan. I really enjoyed listening to that. A real whistle-stop tour of the epidemiology of testis cancer. I'm sure any trainees coming up to the exam or any urologists who want to update themselves about testis cancer and its, up-to-date epidemiology, this is a great paper to read up. And I think this discussion would really sort of whet your appetite to do that. And I hope our readers enjoy doing that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And sometimes you're just looking for that key resource in some of these less common disease areas, aren't you? It's different in prostate cancer. Like, we're overwhelmed with stuff, but sometimes you just need one or two or three kind of key publications, especially if you're preparing for the exam or something like that. And I totally agree with you. I think this is a go-to paper for people who want an up-to-date overview. You can answer those key questions about risk factors and how common is this, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, so beautiful paper. Congratulations to Phil and all his collaborators. Next up, we're going to a segment that we recorded in Madrid, actually, at the EAU meeting just a few weeks ago. We were on site there at the European Urology stand, and we caught up with Alberto Briganti, our editor-in-chief, and one of our award winners. I hope you enjoy this. So I'm on site here at the EAU annual meeting in Madrid for this episode of the European Urology Podcast, and I'm joined by the boss, the editor-in-chief, Alberto Briganti. Albi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. What about you, Declan?
It's great. Well, nice to be here on your stand, the beautiful European Urology stand. It's always good here in the exhibit area. I remember in the old days we used to have a cocktail hour after 5 o'clock back in Montorzi's day, but they don't allow us to do that anymore, do they?
No, we don't do that, but we did a nice lunch and cocktail with reviewers recently, a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And we are happy also to celebrate this year the 15th anniversary of the journal, which is a milestone for us.
Yeah, so I want to ask you a little bit more about that, but first let's welcome Riccardo, who is one of our award winners for, actually you've had 2 awards here at the EAU meeting, Riccardo. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you work, first of all?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Riccardo Mastroianni. I came from Rome, National Cancer Institute. And it was a great honor for me to receive these prestigious awards.
2 awards. So the first one is one of our awards that we give out in the journal. It's called the Impact Award. Yeah. And it's related to not just an excellent article, it is if it gets into European Urology, but it's due to the social media impact around it. So tell us about the Impact Award, first of all.
Yeah, it was a great honor because we strongly believed it was a great project, and we work a lot to obtain the results, and the possibility to share these results all over the world through the European Urology could be a great honor for us. So it was amazing.
And we won't go into the detail. We'll put a link in the podcast to the paper. But Albi, this initiative of recognizing the social media use to help promote your article, it's a good thing, isn't it?
Thank you. So the idea actually is indeed to recognize those articles that impact the most in social media, which is a great metric for disseminating our results and our papers. So we really care about the possibility to disseminate in different channels and ways our papers and results.
And do you have any tips then for tools that you use to help highlight these results using social media?
Yeah, I don't know. Probably I'm not the right man, because I don't love the social media. But I think that it's something where you can share in the easiest way results and also scientific publications. So I think that could be the future.
All of them. Twitter, Instagram. We like using them all. Bianca's fantastic in the back office at European Urology, LinkedIn, podcasting, of course, YouTube, short form videos, etc. But you won another award. You won the Marburger Award here at the meeting as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it was also a great moment for us, also for my family, my mentors, Professor Gallucci and Professor Simone. It was a good job, and thanks to European, we can disseminate the results, and it was a prestigious honor, and we are glad for this one. So,
multiple award winner. Now, Albi, the other thing, as you mentioned, is it's a special year for the journal this year. It's the 50th anniversary of European Urology, which is incredible. We have some celebrations here on the stand, and we've had some events during the week. But yeah, your reflections.
Yeah, it's a fantastic week for us. It's a fantastic meeting because we were able to celebrate in different forms the 50th anniversary, which is a great thing for us because, of course, the journal was founded 50 years ago, and Klaus Schulman, Francesco Montorci, and Jean Catto were real leaders in the growth of the journal over time. So we did a nice celebration during the opening ceremony involving anche Kathy Pierce.
Yeah.
And Kathy Pierce, of course, is a real engine beyond the entire family of journals. So we are really proud and happy to celebrate today and in these days this great achievement.
And great that they're all here. Schulman is here as well, and we've got some celebration here on around the stand, celebrating some of these great editors here. But it's been awesome, and you've had a good meeting otherwise. I mean, you seem to be flat out all the time. There's so much European urology activity here. Apart from these recognising the reviewers and so on, we have multiple large surgery in motion events. We have editorial board activities, awards being given out all the time for recipients of top articles in the journal. It's really busy.
Yeah, we are very happy to do different things during the meeting. You highlighted the most important ones. We also had a nice European School of Urology course on how to deliver the perfect manuscript with the collaboration with some editors from the Lancet, but also you guys as associate editors updating younger generation about what is essential to deliver in a manuscript and how to deliver the manuscript. In a way, we are living a new era, Declan, definitely. It's not a static way of delivering science, but we should also be active in promoting dissemination of our results.
Yeah, exactly right. And we'll have lots of more exciting news coming on dissemination, not just for the main journal, European Urology, but European Urology Oncology, European Urology Focus, and European Urology Open Science, who are really getting spooled up in the next few months with their dissemination strategies as well. Well, Riccardo, congratulations, double award winner again. So for those of you watching or listening to this podcast, we want you on here next year celebrating awards that you might win here from European Urology or the EAU.
That was a really interesting conversation you had there, Declan, with Alberto and Riccardo. Such a brilliant meeting, EAU in Madrid. You were there, so what do you think about the meeting this year?
Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. It's my single favorite meeting of the year. I have other GU oncology meetings I really like, but for all sorts of reasons, it's very high quality science. It's superb socializing. It's always in a great location, and the EAU really put together a really, really good meeting, don't they? And I suppose for us as European Urology editorial team members, yourself and myself, it is our home meeting, isn't it? It's our home meeting. It's a very, very important meeting for the journal. And yeah, it was nice to be on stand there recording that segment with Alberto and Riccardo.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think the educational content of that meeting is just outstanding. I always come back having learned a lot, and the networking potential is brilliant as well. And it's really good to actually meet people that you work with, whether it's panels or journals, and to be in the same room. It's just so inspiring to see all these people, just bounce off ideas. And I certainly come back completely overwhelmed and think that I need to really work hard and do better. So it's a great meeting. My only complaint is the weather was brutal. What do you think about that?
The weather was brutal. You're not sparing your adjectives. So when you're heading off from Australia and you think, I'm going to go to Madrid for a few days, you don't really think about packing a beanie and a heavy jacket, do you? But it was proper winter in Madrid. I think they'd had rain for a month. The streets were flooding, and it was cold. But nonetheless, we might have had the classic Spanish climate for ourselves, but everything else made up for it, I think. I totally agree. And I think you just made a good point there about the educational aspect. So for trainees, there's so much to offer at the EAU meeting. It's not just those big plenaries where practice-changing trials are reading out. Fantastic poster sessions. When you get your poster accepted at the EAU, this is a great opportunity to showcase your work and to mix with other experts in the field. And the courses, what do you think about the courses that the European School of Urology run? These have always been very, very popular with trainees and indeed specialists, just to get an update.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've attended quite a few of these over the years, and I've always come back feeling that it was well worth the sort of the fee or the time that I've spent there. And it's not one of these things that is just put on the program because they have to. They really put a lot of thought into it. And I have to say they update themselves as well. So for example, pertinent to me, there's the robotic recon course. And this year it had like some real experts, in it, and some really good discussion and videos, etc. So I think they do update themselves and keep up with what's going on in the field of urology, and the courses change to reflect that, which I think is really important.
Yeah, and a plug in for European Urology as well. We run a course at the meeting every year, a writing course to help trainees learn about how to get your paper published. And we have a section of our associate editors speaking at that. And that was really, really popular this year. Jam-packed room, and Alberto Briganti and team put on a great, really, really good course for people. So watch out for that next year. So that's all we have time for, Nikita, on this, April 2025 edition of the podcast. Thank you very much to our audience. Please do subscribe, rate, review us so we can share the content with more and more people. And if you have suggestions for what you might want to have covered on this podcast, please do get in touch. You can track us down through all of our socials or email us on platinum@europeanurology.com. And we'll be back next month with more great content from European Urology. That's all from us.
Thank you.